So, hello and welcome back to my C++ tutorial playlist. In this video, I thought it would be a good idea to work together through the CMake tutorial, and the link to that will be in the description because I could use a refresher myself. And for that, I have set up an empty directory here, and basically let's read through this together. And here, starting point, where do I start with CMake? This step will provide an introduction to some CMake basic syntax, commands and variables. As these concepts are introduced, we will work through 3 exercises and create a simple CMake project. Each exercise in this step will start with some background information, then a goal and a list of helpful resources are provided. Each file in the Files to Edit section is the step 1 directory and contains 1 or more to-do comments. Each to-do represents a line or 2 of code to change or add. The to-dos are intended to be completed in numerical order. First complete to-do 1, then to-do 2, etc. The Getting Started section will give some helpful hints and guide you through the exercise. Then the Build and Run section will walk step by step through how to build and test the exercise. Finally, at the end of each exercise, the intended solution is discussed. Also note that each step in the tutorial builds on the next. So for example, the starting code for step 2 is the complete solution to step 1. So exercise 1, building a basic project. The most basic CMake project is an executable built from a single source code file. For simple programs like this, a CMake lists file with 3 commands is all that is required. Note, although upper, lower and mixed case commands are supported by CMake, lowercase commands are preferred and will be used throughout the tutorial. Any commands topmost CMake lists txt must start by specifying a minimum CMake version. Using the CMake minimum required command, this establishes policy settings and ensures that the following CMake functions are run with a compatible version of CMake. To start a project, we use the project command to set the project name. This call is required with every project and should be called soon after CMake minimum required. As we will see later, this command can also be used to specify other project level information such as the language or version number. Finally, the add executable command tells CMake to create an executable using the specified source code files. So the first goal is to understand how to create a simple CMake project, and helpful resources are these, and files to edit is the CMake lists.txt, and getting started. The source code for tutorial CXX is provided in the help guide tutorial directory and can be used to compute the square root of a number. This file does not need to be edited in this step. In the same directory is a CMake lists.txt file, which you will complete. Start with to-do 1 and work through to-do 3. Build and run. To-do 1 through to-do 3 have been completed. We are ready to build and run our project. First, run the CMake executable or the CMake GUI to configure the project and then build it with your chosen build tool. For example, from the command line, we could navigate to help guide tutorial directory of the CMake source code tree and create a build directory. And here we make a directory, step 1 build. Next, navigate to the build directory and run CMake to configure the project and generate a native build system file like this. Then call that build system to actually compile link the project like this. And then for multi-config generators, for example, Visual Studio, first navigate to the appropriate subdirectory, for example, cd-debug. Finally, try to use the newly built tutorial, like so. Note, depending on the shell, the correct syntax may be tutorial, or this, or this, basically. For simplicity, the exercise will use tutorial throughout. And then there is the solution here. So let's prepare our own source code. I didn't check out the tutorial source code here. So let's create a main C++ file and let's keep it very, very simple here. Main, just put out hello world here. Like this. And then we need to create a CMake lists.txt. So, and in here it said that we need to specify the minimum CMake minimum required. And for us, this will be version like so. And of course we can check our CMake version with CMake -- version. And this is CMake 4.0.1. So we are satisfying this minimum version, of course. Then we need to give our project a name. And let's call this hello world. And also to be more specific here, I also like to specify the languages used, which is CXX, which stands for C++, like so. Now we have both of these commands used, and now it says we need to also add an executable. So executable, and we will call this hello. We could also call this hello world, but it is not required to be the same name as the project, but it could be. And now we just need to specify our source file here, like so. And if you're not that familiar with CMake yet, you can also click on these links on the tutorial to read up on those commands. But save it. This should already be everything we need. And here it says build and run. I don't like to do it this way. What I usually like to do is to do CMake and then specify the source directory. And here we need to specify where CMake can find our CMake lists.txt file, which is in the current directory. So that is the dot. And then we need to specify a build directory, and I will just call this build. And CMake will then create the build directory for us. And this will run the configure step of CMake. And of course we have a typo here, languages. Now it's also highlighted. That is a good sign. Now let's run this again. And as we can see, we do now have a build directory. So let's go into that build directory to see what is in here. And as we can see, we have a CMake install CMake and a CMake cache here. And to inspect the cache, we can use CMake, which is basically a command line equivalent to the CMake GUI. And of course, we need to specify our path. This is here. And yeah, we don't have much in here, but that is fine for now. And as we can see, we have a Q command here, quit without generating. And to build now our project, we can use CMake -- build and then specify the path to our build directory with the CMake cache and so on. And this is the current directory. And as we can see, we were successful and have now our hello program here generated. So with that, I think we can move on in the tutorial. So solution, as mentioned above, the 3 lines CMake lists.txt is all that we need to get up and running. The first line is to use CMake minimum required to set the CMake version as follows. Yes, we have specified a different version, but that looks fine. The next step to make a basic project is to use the project command as follows to set the project name like this. Let's see, we have named it hello world, but yeah, that's also fine. Then the last command to call for a basic project is add executable, which we have done here as follows. So let's see how they've done it here. And yeah, that's basically what we have. We have just used different names here. Then exercise 2, specifying the C++ standard. CMake has some special variables that are either created behind the scenes or have meaning to CMake when set by project code. Many of these variables start with CMake and then we have the variable name, so this is the prefix. Avoid this naming convention when creating variables for your project, so we should not create CMake variables on our own. 2 of these special user settable variables are CMake CXX standard and CMake CXX standard required. These may be used together to specify the C++ standard needed to build the project. And then goal is to add features that require C++ standard 11. We will use standard 23. So let's do that. And we can use set and then CMake CXX standard. And then require 23 instead of 11 as requested in the tutorial. Standard required should then be set to on. So we require that standard. And now let's read on. Continue editing files in the step 1 directory. Start with to-do 4 and complete through to-do 6. First edit tutorial CXX by adding a feature that requires C++ 11. Then update CMake lists txt to require C++ 11. Then build and run again. Yeah, I don't think we need to add anything to our C++ file. Let's just go on with this. And yeah, they just have something added here that was added in C++ 11. Then they have set the two variables here. And we could also set this to true here, but that should result, it should be the same thing. Like this. Let's see if it still compiles. We should now just need to do the build again. And as we can see, it still builds, so that should be fine. Then exercise 3 is the final exercise, adding a version number and configured header file. Sometimes it may be useful to have a variable that is defined in your CMake lists txt to also be available in your source code. In this case, we would like to print the project version. One way to accomplish this is by using a configured header file. We create an input file with one or more variables to replace. The variables have special syntax, which looks like this @ var and then the @ again. Then we use the configure file command to copy the input file to the given output file and replace these variables with the current value of the variable, which is var here, in the CMake lists txt file. While we could edit the version directly in our source code, using this feature is preferred since it creates a single source of truth and avoids duplication. That is a good idea in general. And then goal is to define and report the project's version number. And then here are the helpful resources. So we would like to create a new version hpp.in file and then open that and specify pragma once. And then we would have a version string. So let's make this expert auto version and then basically do this here. So, and then we can include it in here, the result, which would be then the version.hpp, which would be the output. Then we need to supply the configure file here. Let's look this up. Configure file, input, output. So configure file, which would have the input file version hpp in, and the output file would be version.hpp. And before that, we would need to set the version to the project version. So that would be the, go back, and we have our project name, and then version major, and then version minor. So make project name, I think it was, and then underscore version major. Let's encapsulate that also into something like this, and then have an underscore and also the same thing again. We make then project name and then underscore version minor, and we could also have the version patch, but I don't think that we will need that. Of course, this needs to be capitalized. This, and this should give us the correct output, right? Let's see what the solution here is. Project tutorial. Okay, we need to set the version here also. So let's do this. And we will also use it 1.3 maybe, just to see if this gets set correctly. And then here in the version string, I think we should also use a dot. And then the configure file like this, we do have it like that. And then target include directories, we don't need to have that since it's in the same directory for us. But yeah, of course it is, we should have it because it gets put into the binary directory. Then private. Then this is the project binary directory. Okay, like this. And I think we don't need to have the CMake prefix here. This is, I think, just project name. So let's do that. Then tutorial major and version minor. Yeah, but this is why we set the version here. Let's call this differently. Let's call this hello version. And then we need to add it here as well, like this. So we already concatenated the major and minor version. We don't have them separated here anymore. We set a new variable hello version and then ask for this variable in our configure file. And then of course we need to make use of that in our main. And this would just be the version, like so. And this needs to be the same as this one. So it can't find it right now because the header wasn't generated yet. And then they have included the file here. And then they print out the version, same as we did. So let's see if it worked or not. CMake build. Of course, we are not in the build directory. So error at line 9, function missing ending this. So let's see. Yes, I can see it right here. Now it should be correct. For target hello, which is not built by this project. Where do we have the add executable? Oh, of course, we need to specify this afterwards, after we have created our target. Now let's test it again. So it looks like it found the first major version, but it didn't find the minor version. So let's see why that is. Oh, of course, because I'm dumb, of course. And then let's create it again. And now let's go and build. And as we can see, we now get our version outputted here. And with that, we are already finished with the CMake tutorial. You can read up further informations here and so on, but I will leave that up to you. This was the basic information. And now we will use the information that we've learned here to restructure our project a little bit, our to-do app from the last video.